Mic check 1 2 1 2. It's the Y2K Collector, and I am back with part 2 of if I only had a certain amount of money to start a collection, what would I buy? And so on my last video, I talked about the things that I would buy if I only had $1,000 to start a retro collection. Well, what if you only had $500 to start a retro collection? And I want to talk about that here. Now, the first thing that I would get if I only had $500 to start a retro collection, it would still be a PlayStation 3 console. Now, in my last video, I talked about the backwards compatibility with the PlayStation 3, and I want to say thank you to those of you who commented on that video, because you did let me know that you don't need a backwards compatible PS3 to play PlayStation 1 games. It looks like all of the fat PlayStation 3 consoles will allow you to play PlayStation 1 games. So that's definitely good for anyone who's interested in picking up the PlayStation 3. Now, when I decided to do this video, I initially said, you know what? I think the first system I would buy would be the Xbox 360. However, there's a thing happening with the Xbox where prices are starting to go up because there have been some changes to their online ecosystem. So I don't think that it's going to be as cheap. I don't think the Xbox ecosystem will be as cheap right now, just because whenever there's an online store closing or anything like that happens, there's usually a ton of hype that surrounds it. There's usually a ton of hype that surrounds the games. Everyone tries to go after it. Prices get inflated for a little bit, and then you got to wait for things to settle down. Even with a lot of the talk about the PlayStation 3's online store being changed and things like that, I haven't seen the price of PlayStation 3s really, shoot up anything that crazy. Probably in large part due to the fact that there are a large number of PlayStation 3s in circulation, so you can still get this console relatively cheap, especially if you're just getting like a standard one. They do come in different sizes in terms of space, like memory. I think you could get the 60, the 80, the 120, and so on and so forth. So the PlayStation 3 is still going to be a great place to start because it opens you up to a lot of what Sony has to offer, in their library of games, starting from the PlayStation 1 all the way to the PlayStation 3. And just to share a few examples with you, I mean, being able to take advantage of all the PlayStation 1 games is great because you have very inexpensive games on the PlayStation 1 that are a ton of fun. Games like Ape Escape, which I think Ape Escape right now probably goes for somewhere in the neighborhood of around 20 to 25 bucks. This is a great game, and I would say, in terms of making a comparison, I would compare this. This would be like PlayStation's version of Mario 64 to me. It's, it never obviously reached the heights of a Mario 64. And I don't know if Sony ever had an iconic mascot as big as Super Mario. If I think of like gaming mascots for Sony, my mind goes to like, Crash Bandicoot, or like the Jak and Daxter series, or maybe Gex. But PlayStation, I don't think in my mind has a character as iconic as Mario. But you still have some really great games on there, and Ape Escape is definitely one of them. And when you do have a PlayStation 3, you can play great games like this along with many others. If you do happen to get the backwards compatible one, then you could take advantage of great PS2 games, right? Like Mega Man X Command Mission. Now, Mega Man X Command Mission is also available on the GameCube, but we all know how hyped the GameCube was. So if you try to buy or play anything on the GameCube, you're going to have to pay that GameCube tax, that GameCube premium. Meanwhile, you still have the same great experience, or you can still have the same great experience playing these games on the PlayStation 2. And the good thing about it is that when you play it on the PlayStation 3, I think the visuals are a bit better than if you were to try to play it on a PlayStation 2, because one of the big things that I have against the PlayStation 2 is just the way the games tend to look. They tend to look dark and muddy, not very clear. So the PlayStation 3 would help out with some of that. So you can take advantage there. And then the PlayStation 3 has some of its own bangers, like Yakuza Dead Souls. I mean, if you're a big fan of the Yakuza series, which is pretty much a 3D beat-em-up series, you're going to love Yakuza Dead Souls. I think that this was a game that was only on the PlayStation 3, and so there are some very cool exclusives that you can take advantage of. So as a collector, the world is your oyster. You have a ton of games. You have a number of libraries at your fingertips, and all you need is this console right here to get things started. So I would definitely take a look at the PlayStation 3 if I only had $500, because I think you can still pick one of these bad boys up for somewhere in the neighborhood of around $60. I see PlayStation 3 sitting at Goodwills, thrift stores, and pawn shops all the time. I've seen them go for as low as $35 with 2 controllers, all the hookups, and even some of the, I think there's like they have the motion sensors for the VR. I'm not sure if the PlayStation 3 had VR. Let me know down in the comments if it had VR, but I know there were some motion sensor wands for it that I've seen. So still a great bang for your buck if you're looking at, okay, how can I get into retro game collecting? PlayStation 3 is a great platform to start on. Now, the second one is one that someone had mentioned in my comments, and I almost included this in my first video of if I had $1,000 to start a collection. But I wanted to save it for this one because I think it would do more damage for those of you who only have $500 to start. And that would be a used Analog Pocket. Now, for those of you who don't know, the Analog Pocket is a very cool handheld system. But the unique thing about the Analog Pocket, and there are a ton of videos on the Analog Pocket, so I'm not going to sit down here and try to explain all the specs of this device here. But this is a device that I don't know if the right word would be emulate, because there is like an emulation factor to this. But this is a device that allows you to play actual cartridges on this device. So you can natively play, I think, all Game Boy and Game Boy Advance games on the Analog Pocket, and it is going to scale them in a very efficient way. It scales the sprites, and it's backlit, so the screen is super popping. Popping. I don't know. I'm sure I'm struggling to describe how it looks, but it's just a very, very good visuals on this. And if you still are playing like your Game Boy games on an old school Game Boy, you definitely want to upgrade to an analog, because you're going to save your eyes by playing your Game Boy and Game Boy Advance games on this. But that's just the tip of the iceberg. With the Analog Pocket, it does allow you to you incorporate these add-on packs. So there are these adapters that you get to plug into the slot right here, and there are different adapters for different systems. So that will allow you to play Game Gear games, Lynx games. I think you can even play like TurboGrafx games on this thing. Not to mention that there are also adapters that will allow you to connect this to a TV screen. And again, all of the graphics, it does a great job of upscaling the graphics without compromising the visual fidelity. You're still able to get some great visuals on this. And with this one device, you're able to play a whole host of systems. It's like 5+ systems packed in one device. And not only can you dock it and play it on a TV screen, but you can charge it and take it with you on the go, which is great. It uses a USB-C connector, which is pretty much universal at this point. And it's just super convenient if you want to take all of your retro with you on the go. So like if I'm going on vacation, if I'm headed out to Hawaii, if I'm going to Japan, if I'm going, overseas anywhere, and I still want to have my retro fix, the Analog Pocket is one of the best ways to take advantage of that. And also, it does allow you to download games. So even if you don't have the money to go out and buy all of the physical hardware, because like TurboGrafx cartridges are ridiculously expensive. Certain Game Boy Advance games are really expensive. And even standard Game Boy games right now are pretty expensive. So if you want to save some money there, you can actually download the ROMs onto this device and still take advantage of the same games and have the same great gameplay experience. So I highly recommend the Analog Pocket as a great place to start. I mean, this is pretty expensive, so if you have a $500 budget, this is going to eat up the bulk of your budget. You're probably going to burn about 80% of your budget just on this device. But again, it opens you up to a whole world of games. If you don't have the money to buy the actual physical cartridges, you can still download the ROMs and still have a great experience. So I mean, with the PlayStation 3 and the Analog Pocket, I think this is a great place to start in anyone's collecting journey. But you let me know down in the comments, what do you think? Are there any systems that I'm skipping or missing, or are there any other devices out there that would give you a better bang for your buck? I'm interested to know. It's the Y2K Collector. Make the best of this Saturday. Take it easy.